At this busy loading zone, workers try to move a top-heavy industrial unit out of a box truck. But it didn't go as planned. Use proper unloading equipment when handling heavy, unpalletized machinery from an elevated transport vehicle. In a busy distribution center, a worker walks on a moving conveyor belt to reposition packages. As he nears the discharge end, his footing becomes unsteady. Never, ever position yourself near the head pulley of an active conveyor system. Inside this food processing plant, a worker steps in front of an active transfer pump to check a vibrating hose. The fitting loosens unexpectedly. Stay clear of the direct line of an active fluid system and avoid leaning over an unsecured hose fitting while a machine is running. Inside a commercial bakery, a worker leans over an active industrial dough mixer with loose clothing. Within seconds, the rotating agitator catches the fabric. Avoid leaning over exposed rotating machinery while wearing loose clothing, open jackets, or dangling accessories. On this factory floor, a worker guides a suspended load onto a conveyor. The moment the tension releases, the heavy hook assembly changes position unexpectedly. Stay alert around unsecured rigging and keep clear of the restricted area of a crane hook after a load has been landed. The moment tension comes off the line, lifting arms, chains, and hooks can move in unexpected ways. Riggers and ground personnel should clear the restricted area as soon as the load is secured and continue watching the crane until all gear is safely raised or stabilized. Head protection should always be mandatory, but PPE alone is not enough. On a loading dock, a worker stands on a large wooden crate resting on elevated forklift forks. As the forklift shifts slightly, the unsecured load crate begins sliding off. Never stand on an elevated forklift cargo as a work platform. Forklift forks are engineered to lift stabilized pallets, not to secure loose cargo supporting dynamic body weight. Inside a busy service center, a technician stands in front of an open service pit. As a vehicle rolls forward, the car continues moving toward the pit-side work area. Keep out of the path of an approaching vehicle, even during slow, routine parking, and do not assume the driver will maintain perfect pedal control. A foot slipping from brake to accelerator or a simple judgment error can send the vehicle forward with sudden movement. Supervisors should enforce a strict exclusion zone in front of moving vehicles, particularly near pits, lifts, or narrow work areas. Anyone guiding a driver should stand off to the side, maintain clear visibility, and use simple hand signals. On a steep residential street, a concrete mixer experiences a mechanical issue and begins moving. Within moments, the moving truck heads toward nearby structures. Prioritize immediate personal clearance whenever a heavy commercial vehicle begins moving uncontrollably, and leave any recovery attempt to properly planned emergency response actions. Chasing, climbing onto, or trying to stop a rolling truck places you directly in its path and can escalate a property damage event into a far more serious situation when the vehicle shifts, changes direction, or contacts an object. Always set the parking brake and place heavy-duty wheel chocks before stepping away from the cab on an incline. At a storage yard, a worker stands behind an unsecured stack of concrete blocks as a truck reverses nearby. A nearby contact causes the entire stack to shift unexpectedly. Do not stand within the risk zone of unbanded heavy materials while vehicles are operating nearby. A freestanding stack of concrete has no lateral support, so even a minor impact can cause a significant material shift. Set a strict exclusion zone around stacked materials and require a ground spotter whenever trucks are reversing in tight spaces. Drivers cannot see through solid obstacles, and standing behind an unstable load puts you completely outside their view. Never assume a driver knows where you are, because one small bump can cause a serious load instability event. An operator moves a heavy load with a compact wheel loader. The weight suddenly overwhelms the machine's balance. Respect the safe operating capacity of heavy equipment and treat balance as a critical part of every lift. A wheel loader, skid steer, or similar machine depends on its center of gravity remaining within safe limits. Once a load shifts that balance too far forward, the machine can become unstable very quickly. Operators must know the weight of the material they are lifting and compare it to the machine's rated limits before moving it. Buckets and forks should remain low during travel to improve stability. On a stone patio, a worker sets up an articulated ladder to reach a shade sail overhead. However, the ladder is configured incorrectly. Never, ever allow any part of a ladder other than its designated safety feet to contact the ground. This creates a low friction trap, where metal components can lose traction on smooth surfaces, while rubber feet are designed to grip and stabilize. Multi-position ladders must be configured so the flared base and rubber shoes fully support the load. On smooth surfaces, stabilizing mats or additional securing methods should be used to prevent unexpected repositioning. In this elevated parking lot, an unattended car begins rolling backward toward a retaining wall. Within seconds, it rolls past the marked parking boundary. Secure every parked vehicle on a slope by fully engaging the handbrake and confirming the transmission is securely set in park or gear. A parked vehicle may seem stable, but gravity is always acting on it, and even a slight incline can become unsafe if the braking system is not properly applied. Drivers should make using the handbrake a non-negotiable habit every time they exit a vehicle, regardless of how level the ground appears. Wheel position, transmission setting, and parking brake should all be checked before stepping away. In a maintenance yard, workers attempt an improper tire seating method with a massive tire, but it didn't go as planned. Rely on approved tire seating procedures and certified inflation equipment when working with industrial tires, especially where large amounts of retained pressure are involved. Introducing heat into a sealed, high-pressure space can turn a routine maintenance task into a serious equipment hazard. Always rely on certified tire seating equipment, safety cages, and remote inflation systems instead of unsafe shortcuts. Heavy machinery tires hold enormous amounts of retained pressure, meaning one heat source in the wrong place can cause that pressure to release suddenly with almost no warning. Inside an auto repair shop, mechanics gather under a raised SUV on a lift. Without warning, the improperly balanced vehicle shifts out of stable alignment on its supports. Never place yourself under a raised vehicle until the lift arms are fully locked and correctly aligned with the manufacturer's jacking points. Ignoring the vehicle's balance can turn a routine inspection into a serious stability hazard. Always perform a low-height shake test before raising a vehicle to full working height. Double-check arm restraints and pad placement instead of assuming the lift is secure. Taking a few extra seconds to confirm stability is far safer than assuming everything is secure under a very heavy vehicle and lift system. At a snowy construction site, a worker stands on a ladder guiding a crane-lifted roof panel. In an instant, the load shifts and drops out of level unexpectedly. Never attempt to manually control an unbalanced suspended load while standing on a freestanding ladder, and never rig a wide roof section without proper multi-point stabilization. A large, uneven roof panel is highly unstable when lifted from a single central point. To prevent this, supervisors and crane operators should use engineered multi-point spreader bars to keep the wide framing level before it leaves the ground. Ground crews should remain completely clear of the load movement zone and use long tag lines from a safe distance rather than trying to physically control the load from below. Inside a high-rise in Beirut, workers overload a passenger elevator with heavy tiles. Suddenly, the overloaded lift becomes unstable. Use only equipment rated for dense construction materials and respect the posted weight capacity of every lift or hoist. Passenger elevators are built for human traffic, not concentrated. Industrial loads such as tile, cement, or stone. When the system is overloaded, the strain placed on cables, braking components, and support mechanisms can place the equipment under unsafe mechanical stress. Contractors should use freight elevators or approved material hoists whenever moving heavy building supplies. Dense materials should be broken into smaller loads and transported in multiple trips rather than forcing a single overloaded movement. In a parking area, a worker enters an open utility access point just inches from parked cars. Without notice, a vehicle rolls forward into the work area. Establish a high-visibility barricaded exclusion zone before beginning any ground-level utility work in an active traffic lane or parking area. Working around an open manhole without a protected perimeter removes you from a driver's clear line of sight and creates a serious vehicle path hazard. Always establish a clear isolation zone with cones, warning signs, and physical barriers before opening any utility cover. Never assume a parked vehicle will remain stationary, especially when you are working in an area with limited driver visibility. Inside a multi-story building, a worker loads a makeshift service elevator beyond its limit. The overloaded hoist suddenly loses stable support and moves downward unexpectedly. Do not use a makeshift or uncertified service lift to move excessive or unweighed heavy materials, such as firewood or construction supplies. Overloading a basic hoist can cause serious equipment failure and a serious elevation hazard. Follow the rated weight limits of every elevator or lifting system, and never ride in a hoist meant only for light goods. Support failure can happen quickly, and without an emergency braking system, the load may descend unexpectedly. On this recycling floor, a worker climbs into the open chamber of an industrial baler to adjust material. Seconds later, the machine begins its next operating cycle. Apply full lockout-tagout procedures before entering any industrial baler, compactor, or automated hydraulic press. These machines are designed to cycle with very high operating force and without stopping for anyone inside them. Entering while the system is still energized creates an immediate critical safety hazard. Facilities must enforce a strict no-entry rule wherever possible and provide tools that allow jams to be cleared from outside the machine. If entry is unavoidable, every energy source must be isolated, locked out, tagged, and physically verified before anyone crosses the threshold. Inside a building lobby, a worker pulls a heavy stack of panels from an elevator as the doors close. A trailing strap gets caught, creating an unexpected situation. Never transport oversized, strapped materials in an elevator unless the doors are secured open and the entire load is clear of the threshold. If part of the load remains caught when the cab moves, the strap can create an unexpected tension point and cause the stack to move suddenly. To prevent this, workers should use designated freight elevators with manual door controls when moving oversized materials. If a load becomes caught in a closing door, release the load and move to a safe distance from the threshold. At a rain-soaked facility entrance, a truck carries a tall stack of foam blocks. A sudden crosswind catches the load, pushing it off balance and shifting it sideways. Match oversized, high-profile cargo with the right transport conditions and vehicle capability, instead of relying on straps alone to keep the load under control during high wind conditions. Large, lightweight material can act like a sail in crosswinds, placing heavy sideways stress on the truck bed, mounting points, and overall vehicle balance. Even if the cargo is tightly secured, wind pressure can still destabilize the vehicle or damage structural components. Fleet managers should match bulky, wind-sensitive loads with vehicles designed to handle their size and aerodynamic profile. Weather conditions must be reviewed before dispatch, and high wind warnings should trigger postponement rather than risk-taking. At a truck repair yard, a mechanic applies excessive force to a heavy pry bar under load. Suddenly, the bar shifts unexpectedly. Apply controlled leverage and maintain a stable working position when using hand tools on heavy machinery under resistance. High-force repairs should be handled with the right equipment and body. Positioning, because relying on full body weight, momentum, or gravity can instantly turn a pry bar into a loss of control hazard the moment the tool slips or the mechanism releases. Always maintain a stable stance and pull toward your center of gravity instead of pushing with your body in the direct path of movement. At a gas station, a man steps into the narrow gap between a turning truck and his parked car. He misjudges the space as the clearance narrows rapidly. Do not use your body as a barrier to protect a vehicle or property from a moving vehicle contact. Stepping into the blind, tight clearance area between a truck and a fixed object can leave you with no safe exit path as the available space narrows. Always choose human safety over property damage. A truck driver cannot see every tight angle during a turn, which makes any attempt to intervene nearly invisible. Vehicles can be repaired, but stepping between a moving vehicle and a stationary object is a risk no one should take. At this masonry site, a worker stands on a makeshift scaffold while a coworker climbs onto the frame. The extra movement suddenly makes the whole structure unstable. Work only from properly built and anchored scaffolding, and keep temporary support frames clear of additional climbing while someone is already positioned above. Improvised platforms may seem functional for a moment, but they lack the stability needed to safely support shifting weight and movement. Supervisors should require engineered scaffolding that is level, braced, and anchored before elevated work begins. Workers should access platforms only through designated points, not by climbing the structure itself. The problem with unstable scaffolding is that it often appears safe right up until the moment it loses support. At a loading zone, a worker stands on a truck liftgate while moving a heavy crate. The moment the load comes off, the platform rebounds sharply upward. Never stand on a tension tailgate or suspended ramp while moving top-heavy freight, and never underestimate the upward rebound that occurs when a heavy load suddenly drops away. When the weight is removed, the stored energy in the vehicle suspension can be released suddenly. Receiving crews should use forklifts, dock levelers, or pallet jacks from stable ground instead of manually shifting heavy freight on a suspended ramp. Workers should also stay clear of the immediate transfer area and avoid standing on the tailgate pivot point. At a demolition site, a worker attempts to remove material from the lower section of a masonry column with hand tools. The weakened structure loses stability and moves outward. Maintain full structural caution around tall masonry walls by avoiding base undercutting with hand tools and staying outside the potential movement area. A wall may appear stable until the exact point its lower support is compromised, at which time the structure can lose stability and move without clear warning. Demolition work should follow a controlled top-down process using proper equipment, elevated platforms, or heavy machinery positioned at a safe distance. At a backyard work site, a contractor steps from a ladder toward a roof access point. The setup becomes unstable and the ladder moves out of position during the transition. Set up extension ladders so they extend at least 3 feet above the landing edge to provide a stable, secure roof transition. That extra height provides a reliable handhold and improves step-off control, while a ladder that stops too low can quickly shift out of position when body weight transfers onto or off the landing surface. Without that extra height, stepping off can shift your weight in a way that causes the ladder base to move out. At a construction site, a worker shovels directly below an active upper level. An item drops from above unexpectedly. Do not allow anyone to work directly below an elevated active work site without a barricaded exclusion zone. Without overhead protection, even ordinary tools can become serious overhead hazards. Use tow boards on elevated platforms and require hard hats for everyone within the hazard zone. Objects falling from above can gain force quickly, and one mistake above can become a serious contact hazard below. On this factory floor, 3 workers stand close as a heavy die is moved by an overhead crane. Then the rigging slips and the heavy block shifts sideways without warning. Establish a clear, restricted area around unsecured heavy loads and keep workers out from between a suspended object and a fixed surface. Loads can shift, lifting points can fail, and rigging can slip during the earliest stage of a lift. Rigging crews should set a clear exclusion zone and use taglines to guide materials from a safe distance. All attachments, chains, and balance points must be checked before the load fully clears the ground. During transfer, on a factory floor, workers adjust a suspended metal die under a crane. Suddenly, the unstable load tips and shifts sideways. Never stand within the tip radius of a tall, top-heavy metal die or mold while adjusting crane rigging. A freestanding steel block has little lateral stability until lifting tension is properly centered and secured. Rigging crews should use bracing stands, blocking, or other engineered supports to secure top-heavy loads before attaching a crane hook. Everyone in the area should remain outside the movement zone during setup. A shifting steel load cannot be safely controlled by hand, and even a small shift in tension can cause a major instability event. To keep learning from these important workplace safety lessons, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Stay aware, stay safe.